My name is Sig and this is my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to do an Afghan or Tunisian double crochet stitch. In episode 5 we discussed just the standard regular Tunisian stitch, and today I'm going to go with the double crochet stitch. Now it's not as intuitive sounding as it might come across as at first, and so I'll go over that with you. One of the things I really enjoy about this stitch, and I don't know how well you can see it with this particular yarn that I used in this sampler piece, but it really very much reminds me of the old-fashioned smocking. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the idea of smocking, it's that sewing technique where fabric was kind of gathered up and a decorative stitch was kind of run across it. You might know it from several decades ago. It was really popular in like little girl sundresses, right? You saw examples of that. The smocking was very popular back in Victorian days as a particular decorative sewing stitch. But anyways, this sort of reminds me a little bit of that, where you kind of have the ridge and then the double crochets. It gives kind of that, at least for me. I don't know, you might have a different opinion of that, and if you do, why don't you go ahead and let us know about that in the comments. Otherwise, I've decided that I'm going to use this orange thread. It's not quite a worsted weight, but it's not really quite as small as a DQ size either. It's somewhere in between, but I'm using the orange because I think you'll be able to see the stitches at least better than with the yarn that I used on this original swatch piece. So let's go ahead and get started with that. And before we do that, I'm going to use a 4mm Afghan hook. And I'm going to go ahead, and the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to chain 10 just for the example of this. Now, depending on what you use this stitch for, you will, probably chain more, at least for the length of the piece you want to use this stitch on. But for our purposes today, I'm going to chain 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And then, because it is a double crochet, or at least a Tunisian or Afghan double crochet, whichever word you prefer to use, it's basically describing the same technique, I'm going to chain an additional 2. And those 2 are going to serve as a stand-in for that particular double crochet stitch at that juncture, or your turning stitch, even though we're technically not turning this because this is an Afghan stitch piece, and in this particular stitch we don't make any turns, much like the regular Afghan stitch. And so now that I have my 2 additional, so I have 10 chain and then 2 additional chains, I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to insert my hook into the 4th chain from the hook, and then I'm going to pull through. Now this is where things get a little different than a standard double crochet. In a standard double crochet, you're going to yarn over and then you're going to pull your hook through both loops. But in a Tunisian double crochet, you're not going to do that. You're going to yarn over and then you're going to pull your hook through the first loop. Then you're going to yarn over and pull your hook through 2 loops. And then you're going to yarn over and pull your hook through 1 loop. And that gives you your double crochet, your Tunisian double crochet. And you want to leave that last loop on your hook. So again, I'm going to yarn over, I'm going to insert my hook into the chain, and then I'm going to pull that yarn through. And then I'm going to yarn over again, and I'm going to only pull that through the first loop. Then I'm going to yarn over and pull that yarn through 2 loops. And then I'm going to yarn over and pull that yarn through 1 loop. And I'm going to leave this loop on the hook. So again, next chain, yarn over and pull through. Yarn over, pull through the first loop. Yarn over, pull through the next 2 loops. Yarn over, pull through 1 loop, and leave that last loop on the hook. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this, and I'm going to finish up this row, and then I'll show you what to do next. So now I should have 10 loops on my hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. It's a good thing, particularly with an Afghan or Tunisian technique, to regularly count your stitches. It's so easy to miss or drop a stitch during your work. If you don't want to do that with each row, because that can get a little tedious and you're particularly careful, do it with every 2 or 3 rows, but try not to just take for granted that you haven't missed or drop a stitch, because it's so easy to do with these techniques. And it's really heartbreaking to get, several rows into your work and realize you dropped the stitch or you missed a stitch, and now you have to pull out all that work in order to redo the stitch you missed. So sometimes it's just easier to count every couple of rows or so, just to make sure that you've got the right amount of stitches on your hook. So now, like with your regular Tunisian stitch, I'm going to yarn over, and then I'm going to pull my hook through that first loop. And then I'm going to yarn over, and I'm going to pull my hook through 2 loops, yarn over, pull my hook through 2 loops, yarn over, pull my hook through 2 loops, and I will continue pulling my hook through 2 loops until I have completed the row. So I've completed this row row 1, and I'm going to get started with row 2. And the way I want to do that with the Afghan double crochet is I'm going to go ahead and I am going to chain 3. Then I'm going to yarn over, and in this next leg, this is your first leg, and in the second leg, I am going to insert my hook, yarn over, and pull that yarn through. So I have another loop on my hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through that first loop. And I'm going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through 1 loop. So basically much like you did before in row 1. So again, yarn over, I'm going to insert my hook into that next front leg. I'm going to pull through a loop, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull through that first loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then yarn over and pull through 1 loop. And again, 1 loop, 2 loops, and 1 loop. I'm going to go ahead and finish this row. And now when you get to this last row, or sorry, when you get to this last stitch, it's going to be tempting to go ahead and put your hook into that back loop of the stitch, but you want to be careful to avoid that. You really want to pick up that front leg. And then you yarn over like usual, 1 loop, 2 loops, and then 1 loop. And so this is what you're kind of looking to have. And then again, I'm going to yarn over and pull my hook through just the 1 loop there on the end. And then I'm going to yarn over, pull through 2 loops for each of the next stitches, working my way from left to right. Okay, so now when I'm ready to finish off this piece, I'm going to simply do a slip stitch, and then I'm going to go into that next leg, and I'm going to make my slip stitch, and then into the next leg I'm going to make another slip stitch, and then I'm going to continue in each leg to make a single slip stitch, And again, make sure you're going into that front leg to make your slip stitch. Now, just a quick note, if for some reason you're just making a straight swatch and you want to kind of just border off your piece all the way around, you're basically going to take your slip stitch and you're going to slip stitch in equal stitches down the side. Make sure that the amount of slip stitches you use correlate with basically the amount of stitches you might have in each stitch. So you're going to, in this particular piece, you're going to do 2 or 3 slip stitches depending on the yarn you're using and depending on what the length of your slip stitch is, or how loose or how tight your particular gauge happens to be, or your tension happens to be. And so you'll determine that. And then you come down here, and then of course in each stitch you're going to do a slip stitch across, and that'll give you a nice clean edge all the way around. So in this piece, I'll show you in this piece, it's not an Afghan double crochet, but what it is it's just a regular Afghan stitch. But you can see where I've taken that single slip stitch and I've worked it all the way around this Afghan piece. And so that gives you that'll help give you a nice clean edge in order to work a border off of, if you're so inclined to do that. You might be following another pattern that you just simply need to know how to do your Afghan double crochet. And in that, and then they'll instruct you on how to finish off your piece more easily once you get to that point. So that about does it for this tutorial. Now, if you found value in this video, help me grow my channel by clicking the like and subscribe buttons. Also, don't forget to tap the bell for any instant notifications on new releases that I try to put out quite regularly. Thank you for joining us today. It's been my pleasure. And as you go into your day, I would like to encourage you to stay creative.